Okay, I'm with Jeff Lindsay from Sanford Bernstein, and we're down here at Always On. And Jeff, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Let's talk about, you cover Yahoo and Google, and there's lots of talk about Yahoo selling its search business for $20 billion to Microsoft. First of all, is it worth $20 billion?
Well, if you just prorate based upon Yahoo's current operations, you get a number more like $2 billion. Let's say with a premium, Microsoft could offer something like 3, 4, possibly 5 maximum. But in this environment, I think if Microsoft is interested in acquiring that business, it'll be probably at vastly reduced prices from what people are expecting. Certainly lower than what has been rumored in some press reports.
So that's a crazy price then, $20 billion, even if it's buying it in a couple of years. What do you think Yahoo should do? Should it sell its search business?
Well, it's not clear if Microsoft are proposing an outright acquisition. It looks like Microsoft are proposing, or at least based upon Steve Ballmer's comments, a paid search deal which was very similar to the one Google was offering. So that might be a way forward for them. That seems to be the most constructive way forward. It's a very similar deal to the one Google has with, say, AOL, and what Google and Yahoo were pursuing, which was stopped by the regulators. Microsoft has a much better chance of achieving that deal because it has a much lower market share in paid search. And so that might be the best way forward.
Does it have to do this? Seems like it's taking so much time and just brain power to focus on this. They could just, goodness, if they just focused on it and didn't consider outside partnering or they could actually have a good search business.
Well, I think the problem with all paid search, well, a lot of internet businesses, if one player becomes dominant, it becomes very hard for the number 2 player to gain any ground. And we've seen that. We're seeing it a little bit in e-commerce between Amazon and eBay. Although that's such a broad area, it might be easier for eBay to regain some ground. But in a tightly controlled area like paid search, it's very, very difficult for Yahoo to do things which will reinvigorate his business. And I think they've tried everything. That's really been the basis of Project Panama. And it's very hard for them to find a way forward, and probably the best way forward is to try and consolidate some market share with the other players. Okay.
What about Google? Let's see. Google started off at, what, $700 this year, now down at $260. Right. I would give or take a few bucks.
Yeah.
When are you going to feel that we've hit a bottom?
Well, I think we may be close to it already, because I think we track online advertising very closely. We speak a lot with the advertisers, we speak with the agencies, and they really are the arbiters of what's going on in that space. And we are seeing that they still have a lot of confidence in paid search. They've pulled their money out of other areas, such as TV, print, radio, magazines, but they've kept their paid search, their keyword buys have remained high.
But throughout this time, they were still putting out fairly good numbers, better relative numbers than its peers, and yet it went, and I heard the magic number was 400. It would start coming in at 400, and now we're at 250. What's the possibility that they could get down to below 200?
I think the markets tend to price in the bad news completely in advance. And I think it's very hard to imagine a scenario now where things could get much worse in terms of advertising overall. And I think although things may be flat for some time, obviously we're facing a tough couple of quarters in the economy, although things may be flat for a time, it's hard to imagine a scenario where people pull more money out of paid search or put it somewhere else. And I think some people have reacted to the fact that keyword pricing has come down a little bit, but it's only come down by about 10%. So I think that's a signal for us. The rate of deterioration is slowing, and that's probably the first sign for us that things are, reaching a bottom, and probably where within a few months we're looking at a scenario where things could really be starting to improve quite significantly.
Which of the companies is doing a really good job at cost management?
Well, ironically, that's another thing that Google has learned. Google has suddenly got religion on cost management. Strange though it may seem, and basically if you looked at them in 2007, some of the things they were doing were almost egregious. They overhired by 2,000 in the second quarter of 2007. Amazing. They've changed CFO now, and their CFO currently comes from the telecom industry. we believe he has a much better grasp of internal processes, much tighter checks and balances on expenditures. And I think what we're seeing for the first time with Google are big cuts in contractors. The San Jose Mercury News is saying that Google took out 3,000 in the third quarter. It looks like they've taken out another 2,000 in November, based on these reports. That's a massive reduction in contractors. And as a result, Google's expense ratios are changing a lot. I think probably the team that has got most religion on expenses seems at the minute to be Google.
Great. And then just last question. Which of the companies will be the most acquisitive next year?
Well, it's a fairly trite answer, but the one for the most cash. Now, funny enough, eBay has a lot of cash,
How much?
But a lot of that cash is overseas, and it can't access it. What a lot of people have to bear in mind is that a company may have $3 or $4 billion on its balance sheet, but if more than half of that is overseas, they can't tap that cash without incurring large capital gains.
Okay.
Now, Google has about a $14.5 billion cash pile at the minute, and half of that's probably overseas, but that still means they've got $7 billion to make acquisitions. So probably I'd say of the players, Amazon doesn't have a large amount of cash. It probably has a couple of billion. None of them have any debt, but the player with the most cash that's easily available and accessible in the domestic market is Google.
Okay, thanks so much, Jeff.
Okay.